On today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers took care of business against the Dallas Mavericks. We'll talk about that and more on this one.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
The man you just heard on that intro music is the man on this podcast. Hey, that is Dillon Stewart. Not only is he the lead singer of Astro Radio, check them out wherever you get your music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. When they do shows again, go see them in person. But he's also the editor-in-chief of Cleveland Magazine. And they just did a really cool cover where they had Kevin Love, ever heard of him, interview Donovan Mitchell. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see the cover of it. I think Dillon has a copy in his hand as well. Oh, yep. Get that print copy. Go find it. Go read it online as well. But Dillon, I'm very excited to talk to you about this. What's going on, brother?
Oh, not too much. Yeah, it's a little surreal to hear my guitar and my singing, one of which is much more in tune than the other, lead me in. So that's fun. Thanks for the shout out, man.
No lying, I get a tweet once a week that someone's like asking who the music is. I'm like, do you not listen to what I'm saying, or am I talking too fast? But it is Astro Radio. Please go check them out, support them. They're really good. All right, so Dillon, tell us first how this comes together. How do you and the whole great team of Cleveland Magazine decide? Okay, we're gonna do a big Cavs thing, and it's gonna be Kevin Love interviewing Donovan Mitchell. How does that happen?
Well, I think it just starts from those natural conversations, really. It's like, I think the best story ideas come from the things that we're the most excited about. And how could you have not been excited when you found out Donovan Mitchell was coming to town? And so he was really the impetus of all of this. Like, we wanted to get to know Donovan Mitchell in sort of the Cleveland Magazine way. And so, I always have had this philosophy. I know that the listeners of this podcast are far bigger basketball fans than I am, admittedly. They're the nuts. But for someone like me, football is my number one sport. I always feel like the NBA really gets going in December. You know what I mean? After Christmas, it's like, okay, you're starting to see who these teams are, and you're starting to get excited about certain storylines and stuff like that. So for me, December was the right month to do it, where it was like, it's too cold to be going to Browns games and Guardians games, and, we're going to get excited about the Cavs. And so we wanted to be able to kind of see how things were shaking out on the court and things like that. And so we started talking to the PR team with the Cavs, and they trying to see what kind of access we could get and things like that, because we were excited about the team. I can't think of a team where we've been that deserves more excitement than this one right now, since LeBron's been around. So, we thought, what a fun way. Our readers are not, always sports nuts. There's a lot of people who come to us for sports, and there's a lot of people who come to us for food and everything else. So what better way than this trusted Kevin Love, 2016 veteran, to kind of introduce us to our new superstar. And so that's kind of where the idea came from. And I really feel like there's been this renaissance of Kevin Love, coming from the days that frankly, people were calling for him to get traded. There were rumors like crazy that he was going to get traded every single year, really even going back to when LeBron was here. And he's still here, and I think become such a beloved member of this team. I think his jersey will hang in the rafters one day. So
yeah, no question.
So it's just cool. We thought this would be just something cool where they could kind of learn from each other.
One of the things that I found really interesting just about this was Kevin Love just kind of needling Donovan Mitchell a little bit, right? Like just having some fun with him in front of this. Like he I think has become more relaxed and all of this stuff. But like there was a rapport there that I think comes through really well in this piece. And it was interesting to see Mitchell talk about, I think maybe the first time we've seen him say like, he had troubles. He said, here's the exact quote: I don't really like watching the finals because the last 3 years I felt like we should have been in that position. This guy has I think talked a lot about what has gone wrong in Utah, and we all saw it, but him to just kind of say that to Kevin Love, them talking about playoff series and talking about, Kevin talks about talking to Draymond. This is just it was interesting to see them go there because they could have chosen not to. They could have been we want to do this. This team in itself could kind of avoid talking about that, but I think they have kind of set goals, and to see them and these guys with different levels of playoff experience, Kevin, obviously the guy in this roster with real championship equity, for them to go there was I think a really interesting thing to come out of this, and just for them to openly discuss that was really fascinating to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, another bit that I found really interesting of 2016 championship history is I think you kind of got to read between the lines with it a little bit. But I think once again, you hear from Kevin Love sort of saying that it doesn't seem like it was very much fun to win that championship. It was a lot of things, but fun wasn't it. And I think he kind of mentions that is just it was he says back then it was chaos, and this and it was controlled chaos, and we found ways to win. But in 2014, 15, 16, 17, but this feels more like a college atmosphere. And what I took from that is I'm having fun. This is enjoyable to be around these guys. And it's almost like maybe he's reached a point where he can find maybe a little bit of that happiness and fun and stuff and still win ball games. And that's got to be a great place to be.
Yeah, it is. I think the other point you hit on at the top, and just where the city is at with basketball, I think is an interesting question, because I don't. It's not a secret that I think this is a Brownstown. This is a Brownstown. There's nothing quite like I went to one Browns game this year. It was the Browns Bucks game. You can't replicate the experience and the vibe, even when the Browns are kind of just listless right now, of that Sunday walk around, people tailgating, that whole energy. You can't replicate that with how many basketball games there are. The same problem the Guardians have to some degree. But you go to the arenas now, the energy is there. It is not listless like it's been the last couple of years, and it got there a little bit last year. But Mitchell's arrival has really, really elevated it. And there's parts of the ways they're doing it. I personally think the chain's just a little corny. I think the jockeying can be a little corny and forced. But I think what the energy you're feeling around this group, and Kevin kind of is maybe an example of that, of he was here when it got bad, and the vibes around him were bad, and now it's good again. It's there's not really been a Cavs thing like this in our lifetime, at least. You and I are not of the age where we were crushing Mark Price games in Richfield, right? It has been LeBron for us as a generation, and this is the real shift, and you feel the energy of that, I think, in a lot of ways, kind of spiritually.
I totally agree. An aside about the chain, it is a little. It hurts that it's I think the authenticity of it is sort of taken away when you find out that there's a marketing campaign from a local jeweler behind it, which is the case. I can't remember exactly the jeweler.
It is Jared. Free
Jared.
No advertisements for Jared, unfortunately. They can drop the money whenever they would like, and I will do some ad copy for them. But yeah, that is Jared.
So, but I totally agree. And I think there's external factors at play there too. I mean, I think it's uncomfortable to be a Browns fan right now, no matter where you land on the Deshaun Watson thing. None at the very least, you were promised a much better team than this, even in a retooling, not quite rebuilding, but a retooling year. And I think it also speaks to the other elements of what you'll find in this great issue of Cleveland Magazine, which is on the newsstands today and at clevelandmagazine.com. The other element of what we did is, yes, we talked to Donovan Mitchell and Kevin Love, but we also highlighted all the great reasons to go to Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. I mean, it's a lot more fun than it is going to a Browns game. So, I think that has created a much more diverse fan base for the team. I know my mom's the biggest Cavs nut. If you ever see someone with the last name of Stewart trolling people who respond negatively to the Cavs Twitter accounts, that's probably my mom.
Amazing.
And you know, she's the one that re-ups their season tickets every year. I mean, so she's a lot more comfortable being a Cavs fan than she is a Browns fan. And so, you know, we meant it when it's like, welcome to Cavs Town. I mean, if ever I've seen a shift toward this being a basketball town, it's been this year. And I still don't know that I'd go that far, but you know, it's definitely shifted. And I think part of it too is like, yeah, we were excited about LeBron, but LeBron brought his own baggage, having left and stuff like that. So I mean, this is certainly the only except last year. But you know, it's still the carryover, and Donovan really driving it home, showing up and being the guy that we were promised. You know, that I think had something to do with it. But like, this is the first non-LeBron basketball team that I've ever seen the average Clevelander, the average fan, which is how I kind of describe myself in the NBA. I don't watch a ton of NBA outside of the Cavs. You know, I think this is the first non-LeBron team that has this excitement that I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Is there anything? What else about this interview stood out to you? Like, I thought the baseball stuff that he talked about was kind of interesting. I have a lot of questions about Donovan Mitchell shouting out Boston Market. Just like a lot of notes there for Donovan. But what else kind of stood out to you as far as this interview goes?
I mean, as a former food writer, still dabble in it, but you know, that kind of broke my heart to see the Boston Market love out of Donovan Mitchell. And I mean, he seems a picky eater. His favorite foods were sweet potatoes, and if someone came over and he had to cook, he'd make Captain Crunch, he said.
Appalling,
Yeah.
Donovan. You're in your late 20s. You can't like make a chicken breast and like what are we doing here?
At least like, you know, some better cereal. I mean,
you have lots of money, Donovan Mitchell. You could probably afford a chef to cook the dinner. That would have been my answer. It's like, I will pay someone to cook a really nice dinner. I will not cook myself.
Right. But no, I thought the bits about, you know, being in the Mets locker room, I knew his father had been associated with professional basketball, but, you know, or with professional baseball, and he had worked in the Mets organization and played and things in player development. But that bit about Donovan sort of growing up in the Mets locker room and being around guys like David Wright and, you know, all these high-level performers, and how he feels like he sort of learned through osmosis, like how to be a professional. I mean, he grew up. He really did grow up in a professional sports environment, and I thought that was a really interesting takeaway. Again, you know, it's funny. We really frame this as Kevin Love interviewing Donovan Mitchell and getting to know Donovan Mitchell, but my favorite bits were just getting to know Kevin Love more, frankly. There was a bit where, you know, they didn't really want to go into the Utah stuff more.
Yes.
That gets left on the cutting room floor, but
he has been very reticent, Donovan, to talk about that, and there's times where he's like gone out of his way to like make sure he mentions Rudy Gobert in a positive light when he's talking about Utah, and I'm like dying. That is one of those things where like, give me the truth serum, but like I also understand like why he's not gonna like maybe unload the clip.
Yeah, and that was a Cavs communication kind of message too. Like, yeah, he doesn't really want to go there. So I found that interesting. I thought it was hilarious. I'm pausing because I don't know if I can swear on this podcast, but the Mary F. Kill bit, that was not like, you know, some of these questions we certainly preloaded, and other ones, you know, Kevin Love certainly took some liberties. We didn't want to leave him with nothing, but he did his thing. And you know, at one point he all of a sudden he pretends like he's looking at the sheet, and he's like, okay, this one, oh my gosh, Mary F. Kill. And you know, there were definitely some Cavs communication people who were like, whose hearts I saw hit the basketball court that we were shooting on that day. But so that was fun. You know, I think just seeing that personality and that looseness and that willingness to joke around, you know, when I'm doing an interview, I always say this, like, and you know this too, is like, I only have control of my parts. Like, I can ask the questions, but someone's only going to go as deep as they choose to go. Now, when I am not even asking the questions, I was totally out of control of this interview, and so I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, we'll see how this goes, and I kind of it's throwing it up, and they were totally so game to just have fun and ask each other questions and go there and talk about. I think they got real deep in terms of like the mindset of championships and champions and how they think about championships and stuff like that. I mean, Donovan Mitchell did not talk about wanting to be the MVP. In fact, he said that the chance for him to be MVP were premature. He did not talk about wanting to score a certain amount of points or hit any personal milestones. He talked about envying those who have lived through parades and won clinching games in the playoffs and in the and in the finals. And I found that that seems to be his single. The one-track minded mission is that dude wants to win a championship. He wants to know what Kevin felt in 2016, and Kevin seems to think they're close. They're decently close to that possibility.
Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They have it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. BetOnline is always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. They will have, for instance, lines up this weekend for Cavs Pacers and Cavs Mavericks, two interesting home games for the Cavs on the weekend slate. They'll have World Cup final odds for Saturday's third place game and Sunday's finale as well, if that's something you're into. I know I am. They'll have some game props for everything as well. Bronze game on Saturday as well, if that's more of your jam. Remember, there's NBA awards, there's anything you want at BetOnline. Remember, that's BetOnline. That's where the game starts. Dylan, let me ask you as we wrap up here. What have you made of this season? And then as a second note, do you feel like this is in some ways already Mitchell's team?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they, just some more behind the scenes, how the sausage gets made. Like, I know they were really pushing Evan Mobley at the beginning of the year. And I think Evan's great and fun and everything. But like, Donovan Mitchell is everything that they said he would be and more. I mean, he came in, you add that to him being, young, energetic, interesting, well-spoken, just sort of a nice guy. Like, he just has it all. And yes, I mean, I look at it as his team. I look at it as Kevin's team too, frankly, even though I don't think he sort of has the I don't think he might have the on the court impact every single game like Donovan does. But I think the off the court part, like the reverence that Donovan had for Kevin was so obvious, and I think that he is a leader in that locker room, absolutely. And and I think when you see all of those things, you see Kevin Love, who was counted out but really wanted to be here. You see Donovan Mitchell, who seemingly, maybe though he doesn't always want to talk about it, had not the best experience in Utah and is so happy to be here. You have guys like Jared Allen who, are just fun. I think when we all talk about, this team is just fun, I think that's what we talk about. Like their happiness to be here. They're sort of really still from a year or two ago performing above sort of expectations. I think they've exceeded expectations from if you reverse back to the beginning of last year, certainly. So compared to our last experience with competitive Cavs basketball, which was stressful. It was stressful as a fan, let alone for someone like Kevin Love. That was not fun to watch. I loved winning the championship. I loved watching LeBron, but it was always something. It was always like, difficult. And so that's why I land on this team. It's fun to watch. I don't feel like the season is a loss if they don't make it to the finals this year, and I think that's where we were before. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I don't know. I'm going to keep supporting them. They've made it more fun to go to the arena, I think. And do I think they're going to win a championship? Who knows? But I think that this is probably our best chance to get one in the city anytime soon, and certainly the best team I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I don't think that's wrong. All right, last thing. Best food in the arena is what?
Ooh, I don't know, but I will say I know Karen Small from Flying Fig, and she previously opened Flying Fig and changed that into Pearl Street.
Pearl Street Market, yeah. They have a very good shrimp bowl at there, which is like a weird thing to find in an arena, but it's genuinely very good.
So did they rebrand it as Pearl Street then inside the arena?
I believe so. My brain is Goop, but like I believe that it is Pearl Street on there. Yeah,
so it was like Flying Fig or the Fig or Fig Cafe or something like that. I think she makes amazing food, so I'm always a big fan of that. You probably spend more time there than me. What's your favorite?
I would say that, or I think Flower is like, if I'm ever just like I want pizza, I think it's very like they have pepperoni, they have a cheese, and they have a sausage, and they have a meatball sub now, which I've not had, but I would say it's one of those two things. It's always a go-to. Also, just like there's a shout out Danny Cunningham from ESPN 850. He always gets a chicken tenders from Rocco's. Then he goes and gets like the hot honey from like the other chicken tender place, just because the hot honey is really good. The hot honey, if you're like into spice and into honey, it's really good. Yeah, it is honestly like genuinely like it is definitely like in the same way that I think Guardians games are like that. You have like elevated food options, and that it plays into the environment. I think in a really positive way for what a game is and going to a game is in 2022. Like and it also like. Too. Yeah, it's all local, and it's almost like that's another way they differentiate themselves from the Browns. Not that there's like not good stuff at Browns games, but it's like they know that like they put in some effort to bring you in, and and the food I think reflects that in an interesting way. And like I think Donovan Mitchell's trade reflects it in that, where it's like we have to do stuff. We have to be an organization with ambition. I think that's really part of all of it. Yeah, absolutely, and and that was a big reason why we wanted to. Work with them too. And like, every time you're making these decisions, like, you're associating your brand with other brands too. And they're an exciting, fun brand to be associated with. The jerseys are cool. The players are fun. They're doing the right things in the community. I mean, even simple things like hosting voting there and stuff like that, having the local restaurants in there. Donovan's going to local high school games. Like that's all cool stuff to see. And and they were so certainly in journalism, every time we write a story, it's not so well received. I want it to be. If I do my best and I'm still honest about things, like I'm not trying to flatter people, but I want them to ultimately feel it was fair and good. And this month you'll be able to see the Cavs this issue in all the Cavs team shops in the arena, and I think some of the concession stands too and stuff like that. So they were pumped about it, and they're like, "You guys are doing something cool. We like what you're doing, and we're gonna bring it in the team shot and like support local." And we're a local-owned company, and I don't see it as that different than getting some of these local restaurants in there. So yeah, it's a great time to be a Cavs fan. It doesn't get any better than this. All right, Dillon, hold up that issue one more time as we get out of here. Go check that out. Buy it now. Get the actual physical copy. An actual physical copy is so much cooler than reading it online.
Oh yeah.
I have a deep collection of like magazines, and this is added to it. I mean, like
all sorts of good Cavs photos in here, man.
Yeah, it's awesome great stuff. It's awesome stuff. Go pick it up. If you see it out of the game, that should be the souvenir you buy that game. It's really good stuff. I mean, look at those photos. They're excellent.
Brought to you by Jared.
Gonna slap a massive Jared sponsorship. All right. Thanks again to Dillon for coming on. Evan and I'll be back after this to talk about Cavs and Mavs, which we'll finish with there. But Dillon, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this with me.
Thanks for having me, buddy. Always good to see you.
Today's episode of Locked On Cavs is brought to you by Turo. Turo is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles from just about any occasion or budget across the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. You can book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip, get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday, find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from A to B, or you can even test drive that new electric vehicle you've had around to see how it fits in your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you, and every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions can and probably will apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive today at Turo.com.
Okay, last segment here on the Locked On Cavs podcast. Chris Manning and Evan Dammarel. Evan is now with me. Thanks again to Dillon Stewart for coming through to chat about that really cool Cleveland Magazine profile that Kevin Love and Donovan Mitchell did. So, Evan, the Cavs, I thought, in this Dallas game really just kind of manhandled and took care of Dallas. They win 105-90. Donovan Mitchell back on the scene against the team that he had a lot of troubles with defensively in the playoffs last year. Scored a game-high of 34, 13-20 from the field, 6 of 9 from 3, 4 assists, 3 turnovers, a steal, 3 rebounds. You got 18 from Lamar Stevens as well, and maybe his best game in the starting lineup. But I think overall they really withstood everything Dallas threw at them, threw a lot of bodies and threw a lot of attention at Luka, made him work for what he got. And it was a really nice rebound performance if you're Cleveland coming off of that really bad performance, letdown performance against the Spurs on Monday.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I'm willing to go out on a limb a little bit here and say that this is probably the best performance the Cavs have just kind of put together given the circumstances this entire season up to this point, because let's just be frank, the Cavs aren't a good road team. I think they're 1-8 in their last 9 road games heading into this one, which, isn't great. But like you said, the Cavs kind of came out like really hot, really fast. You saw a lot of just good stuff from Donovan Mitchell, especially in the first quarter. Darius Garland looked super locked in for the opening moments and then kind of ceded the scoring responsibility to Mitchell when they realized he was hot. And it was encouraging to see the Cavs just kind of look like that. And then obviously the Mavericks, we downplayed their struggles a lot, I think, on this show, but they are still a very talented team, and they have a top 5 player in the league, and Luka Doncic, on their roster. So naturally they are going to fight back. And the Cavs didn't seem rattled by it like they usually do on the road this time around, which is, again, encouraging to see. So this is a good, flagpole, tentpole win if you're the Cavaliers, and you can kind of use this as like an example, like, hey, this is what worked for us when we're on the road in a hostile-ish environment. So this was a good win for the Cavs at the end of the day. I was pleasantly surprised, especially with the defense they played on Luka at times.
Yeah, and look, I think this was a Mitchell game. He has 27 in the first half, just downright accurate from the field. They withstand Dallas in part. He kind of goes. He doesn't do a ton in the third. It's a quiet quarter for Mitchell. He only has in that quarter 2 points on 1 of 2 shots, like a very quiet third quarter. Then in the fourth, he kind of takes over in the Cavs. He was only 2 of 6 in that quarter. Didn't take any free throws, but had 5 points, had big buckets for them. In addition to the defense kind of stepping up, you got some really good Evan Mobley offense in that quarter as well. And they just withstood, I thought, really impressively with Mitchell, with Lamar Stevens, who had 9 points in the fourth quarter, doing a bunch of stuff. There's
Lamar Stevens across the board.
Yeah, and look, I thought they just handled what Dallas threw at them. Dallas is a team that plays 5 out. They play very slow. They kept saying on the broadcast that this was the 2 slowest paced teams in the league. You felt it when you watched this game. You saw them, the Cavs at first, if particularly Kevin Love, struggling with some of the rotations that Dallas was asking him, Dallas's offense demands he kind of makes as the 4. And they just kind of withstood it all. And Evan, let's hit on Lamar Stevens. Mm-hmm. The numbers on him as a starter have not been great. And this is in itself kind of a kind of an outlier game for me. He has a double-double, 38 minutes for him, 18 points, 8 of 15 from the field, 1 of 6 from 3, 1 of 2 from the line, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, a turnover, no steals, no blocks. A single game plus minus is wonky and all that, but at a game high plus minus of plus 22. Just a really, really good effort from him, a really just good, impactful game from Lamar Stevens. And again, I don't know exactly, I don't really believe he is the answer for a lot of what Cleveland needs right now. They're kind of surviving with what they have on the wing at this moment. But credit to him, this was a really, really good performance from him. He was really smart, awesome, a lot of good cutting from him.
Yeah, At the end of the day, I think Lamar Stevens does deserve minutes in this rotation, no matter what. But I think maybe it's indicative of a case where, like, okay, maybe not 35 plus minutes or even 30 plus minutes a night. Like, find that sweet spot where Stevens isn't burning out all the energy in his tank, and he's able to give you a lot of high energy effort, like you saw tonight. And yeah, like you said, statistically very impressive. But more for me than anything is just the fact that he drew the assignment of Luka a lot on defense. Like, you notice Dallas was stashing Luka on Evan Mobley a lot because they let Mobley float to the perimeter in those cases. But the Mavericks also, in turn, did take advantage of the fact that, like, hey, Lamar Stevens is not a great three-point shooter. And yes, he was 1 of 6 from 3, but Lamar made the one that counts the most, the only one he made. And I think that was just kind of like a huge momentum swing to, like, permanently put the game back in Cleveland's favor. But yeah, I was just really impressed with, like, his intangible play. I think his defense on Luka, like, sure, Luka's a little banged up, but, like, the Cavs made a concerted effort to frustrate the head of the snake for the Mavericks, and you saw it work very effectively for them throughout this game. And yeah, nothing really else to say, but, like, Lamar was great. I think either him or Donovan Mitchell, if you were giving out awards, if we had the time to do so, were the MVP choices for tonight, or Wednesday's game, rather.
Yeah, look, I think you had a lot of guys that, like, I think contributed to the defense on Doncic. Like, I think Okoro and his stints did pretty well. I thought for the most part the bigs did as well as you could want in switching onto Luka. Like, he obviously, like, he beat Allen one-on-one a couple times and whatnot, but, like, he's Luka. He's going to do that stuff. But they contained him, I think, as well as you can. It's interesting that we'll see this again come Saturday, just because, like, you don't normally get games that close together in that sense, right? Like, you don't always get that stuff. And now you're going to see, okay, what adjustments do the Cavs make? What adjustments does Dallas make? Does maybe JaVale McGee, who they gave, like, a real contract to in the offseason, does he play against a Cavs team who really, like, had a lot of success because their bigs are just significantly better and more talented than what Dallas had? Like, that was kind of a part of this game as well. The last thing we should note is that Cedi Osman did get a DNP, coach's decision DNP. This is coming off of him playing 7 minutes against the Spurs. Let's see what it looks like Friday and Saturday, but, like, maybe we are on, is Cedi out of the rotation watch at this current moment?
We could. It's tough because JB has been asked about, like, hey, why does Cedi have some irregular minutes? And he's just like, I want him to earn those spots in the rotation. And, like, there's guys that are just playing better in JB's eyes. So I think it is going to be something worth watching. I know there's a lot of folks on that you and I know personally, Chris, that are big advocates for Cedi Osman being a consistent part of this rotation. But, like, this game certainly was an interesting outlier where, like, the Cavs weren't overly reliant on shooting from the wing spot, and that becomes a glaring issue with no Dean Wade. And if Cedi Osman is not feeling it on defense that night, like, he gets a quick lead or a quick yank, and it's tough. But yeah, it's worth watching for sure, because, like, what the Cavs worked with an 8-man rotation against Dallas was effective. But again, you don't want to, like, run Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland into the ground, so maybe just stretch things out a little bit so you're not so micro-focused on just a regular season game against the Mavericks in December. I don't know.
I mean, you just arguably need some of the shooting Cedi provides you and whatnot. Like, and again, like you read, the minutes total for your starters in this game, Darius Garland plays 34, Mitchell plays 37, on basically right up against 38. Mobley and Allen, Mobley plays 35, Allen basically plays 36, Lamar plays 38. Like, and Lamar at the end of this game, he's still in when it's, like, garbage time, and, like, when they put in Neto and Isaiah Mobley and Robin Lopez and Okoro, and Lamar stays out, and there was just, like, you could see him, like, leaning over, putting his hands on his knees because he was exhausted, because he put a lot into that game. So, like, there is just, like, a maybe play more guys and plus the shooting thing. And look, Rubio will come back. That'll add another body. I think that will play regular minutes, health providing. You know, you'll get Dean Wade back. But, like, it is an interesting thing that I think very much so, Evan, if we get to Monday, let's say. And let's say Cedi doesn't play Friday against Indiana, doesn't play Saturday against Dallas. I think maybe, like, and I'm sure he'll be asked about it over the weekend. I'm sure he's asked about it last night. I'm sure it's just something we can talk through that decision more, some of the numbers on it and all of that stuff. All right, that, though, is going to wrap up this episode of Locked On Cavs. I'm Chris Manning. That is Evan Dammarel. I'll be back tomorrow. Tony East from Locked On Pacers and I are going to do a little crossover to get you ready for Friday's Cavs-Pacers game. We're going to revisit the Karis LeVert trade, which I'm sure people are... Honestly, hasn't aged well, but we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. we will talk about it. But until then, I'm Chris. That's Evan. Everyone, be well. Thanks again to Jake Stevens for producing this episode. I'll talk to you all on Friday.